Good afternoon and welcome to this LinkedIn Live with InTouch Networks. I'm Zoe Eccleston and I've been working in health and wellbeing since the turn of the century and have really enjoyed my job. I've worked for 5 big corporates and since then worked for lots of different companies in different settings, working as an in-house consultant, helping different companies work out their ideas around health and wellbeing. Given the current situation, I've been asked about working from home with the outbreak of coronavirus. I'm going to spend some time just talking around where the idea of working from home started, what it's like in the current situation, and finish on some ideas of how this might need to change in the future, whatever that's going to look like, which of course we don't know at the moment. So, in order to get started around working from home, I know now we've all been thrown deep into it, of people that never imagined that they were going to be working from home are now experiencing what many of us thought was going to be our ultimate dream job. I think probably talking to our friends and families, we've already found that many of the things that we thought were going to be so easy are not proving to be the case. Interestingly, working from home is not new. It started right back in the hunter-gatherer days, when we think about it, although people went out hunter-gathering, they brought back their finds and their food and then turned it into many cottage industries. This grew quickly over the centuries, where when we look back at our ancestors, most of the work was done in their own homes, whether that was spinning on the farm or producing things for their village. It's quite interesting now how we've actually reverted back in history and finding having to have self-supplying local communities is very, very reassuring. Things moved on quite quickly, and with the Industrial Revolution, again, people started for the first time to think about leaving their homes and going out to work in a much more recognised and organised manner. They went to factories, and working hours that we now perceive today actually started to become reality for many people. The war in the turn of the 19th century really changed things again, because for the first time ever, people were asked to do jobs that they weren't always expected to do, and they had to turn their hand to different things. And this meant for the first time in mass numbers that women went out to work. At that time, women who had actually really enjoyed being part of the war effort were expected to go back and become housewives. And that would be another whole talk about how that changed the aims of working women in this world. But for all of us, whatever it was, it actually did start the advent of probably more people going out to work and having less home industry. So it's become ironic that actually in our generations, and we are starting to really, for many years now, actually want to work from home and see this as the ultimate prize. And actually, in a lot of studies that we could look up, we see that when people are asked what their best or most likely benefits to be requested at interview are, the ability to work from home features very highly on most people's wish list. As a physiotherapist myself in the past, I used to joke that I couldn't really do remote physiotherapy. But again, coronavirus has seen many, many strange things happening, and there are many online medical consultations going on for a variety of reasons, if not only just to stop the spread of the disease. So moving now to why it is so different in this current timing, I think the things that we really need to think about are that we've been thrown into a situation which, while some of us might have wished for, some of us might have experienced before there was a choice. And we know choice is really powerful. You could choose to go into the office or choose to be at home. Support networks were there. And if they broke, then we could probably do something very different to how we can do that now. Probably one of the biggest changes at the moment is that the managers have had no training for this mass exodus of their staff. So people are having a lot of stress put upon them for different reasons, and at the same time having stresses from home that again have been incredibly challenging for many people. So you're now working from home in a very small proximity to your family, and your family are not doing their normal things easy. So everybody is experiencing change. And if we've known anything over the working world, one of the most difficult things any of us find to manage is change. So it's not surprising that so many people at this time are struggling and not quite sure what to do. Companies that are doing really well at this I think are companies that are used to change and are used to having to think on their feet. Companies with really excellent leaders that are setting out clear strategies, that know how they want to be changing it and communicating really well with their managers. Managers that are used to managing, but are also flexible at what they're having to manage. So your day job may have looked very different 3 weeks ago to what it is now. I think there are some really key important pieces that we've already started to see during this prolonged period where we are having to work in our homes rather than working from home. And I think there is a differentiation there that needs to be recognized, because many people are having to adapt to situations that they wouldn't have wished upon and wouldn't have dreamt about asking, and probably given the choice now would zoom back into the office tomorrow at the drop of a hat. So one of the things we need to really be is kind, because as we always say, every situation is different for everybody. And that's something that not only changes through this period, it changes on a daily basis. I'm sure all of us listening and thinking about it have had good days and bad days during this outbreak, days where we think, yeah, we can do this, it's great, and looking at the positives, and days when they're stuck in a remote IT queue trying to get help because they're really, really struggling to log on at home for something that they feel is really important. All of the issues that have always been thrown at us. And again, when I was reading the history of why home working was either liked or disliked, the idea of trust. And this is something that we really, really need to focus on. We need to focus on trust both ways. We need to trust that our workers are doing what they're doing and that they're doing their best, and trust that our managers are guiding us and giving us the information that we most need to take. Relationships at this time are really, really being challenged. Relationships with managers. Some people have started new jobs in new companies who have never met their manager and are already part of a very important new working link that is going to be important for the future of that company. And at the same time, many employees have been furloughed and don't know what this means and are struggling. And they're struggling to find out from each other. They're struggling to find out from their managers. And as I've already alluded to, their managers don't know what it means because none of us have been through it in the past before. Many of you will be leaders or HR professionals, and never before have you been asked to do so many different and new jobs very quickly in a very short space of time. And I think sometimes that has been very difficult for people because they're not sure where to go for support. Home relationships that can often give support are not as easy to gain support from at this time, as people are trying to share workspaces, homeschool children, worry about elderly care for their relatives who they're unable to see, and probably work in much more confined spaces to their usual working surrounding, with equipment that they always had meant to do the training on, but had not quite got round to thinking about before this outbreak was upon us. So I think there are some very key steps that we can try and do through the coronavirus so we can help our teams working really well. I really feel that I'm probably teaching most of you to suck eggs about mentioning them, and you will have your own. There are many resources on the internet to help different companies and different resources. And I have found, in order to prepare for this, it really useful to have a look at some of those articles. There's some great leadership pieces around what it's like, around what happens when a shock comes. And not only will these help us cope in the current situation, but it's going to help us plan and get through the future and try and be ahead of the curve of what is going to have to be resolved when this strange working environment goes back to what we regard as normal. At this time, managers need to manage. And so there are some very good, very clear advice that hasn't changed because of the COVID-19 situation, but has probably become even more important because we are all so isolated. Social isolation is great for getting work done. I think it was probably the most used reason for why people wanted to work from home, because they were able to get quality work done. And that was when most people took off to write their strategy or their report, or to have some time thinking. But as we've seen on many video and memes that are circulating between us, working at home with quality time is not quite so easy when you're sharing your space with your children, your flatmates that you thought you were just renting a room with, not deciding to spend the next 3 weeks with, has really, really challenged each and every one of us on a daily basis. I think clarity of communication has never been more important. And that communication needs to work both ways. The manager needs to communicate what is required and what is needed of their staff, whether that is what is needed in the new furlough situation, so that the employee can feel confident what is happening, why it is happening, and what they are expected to do. And also that they are given the ability to communicate back into their manager if they are unsure. Manager-employee relationships can often become quite strained when you don't bump into people in the corridor and just have your normal face-to-face conversations. While video links are good, they are quite awkward if you're not used to using them. They do definitely help you be able to see people's facial recognition, so you can have some social cues as to how things are going. But already I have heard some very worrying ideas that people are starting to feel that they're out of the loop, excluded, because in social isolation, sometimes when we don't have enough to think about and we have many other worries, our worries grow, and we need to try and make sure that we have two-way communication. So please ensure you do have some time every week that you stick to, however difficult that becomes, to have a check-in with your employees and with your managers. Both of you make a two-way agreement that that is really important, so you can just touch base and keep up to date with what is happening for you and at work. It seems so odd when we're sat in our private spaces to be talking to our managers, and that's something that afterwards, again, is going to have some discussion as to how that will be when we go back into all working together. I think all of the other things, as I say, have been very widely distributed about how to work, making sure that you have a really good routine, setting yourself limits on your working day, allowing yourself a lunch break or a coffee break. I remind myself only too often that when I used to work in an office on a daily basis, 9 to 5, I didn't find it any problem going out for a run at lunchtime because people knew that in the morning I was working in the afternoon. But as soon as I started working from home, I kind of felt like I shouldn't go for my run at lunchtime, as if that wasn't real. And I think we do have to set ourselves boundaries, communicate what we're doing, communicate our best working hours, and have that open discussion with your colleagues and your managers as to what would work best for you, what works best for them, and come to a compromise so you can all feel happy, you are productive, and spend less time being anxious about not being able to do or be seen in the working world. So turning our thoughts to what the future might look like after the virus has allowed us to remove some of our social isolations and we go back in. Of course, nobody, including myself, knows what that's going to look like or when that's going to be. But there are some things that we already need to start thinking about. We really need to start thinking about the things that are going to be top of everybody's mind. What's this mean for our business? How will I survive? Will my job be important? I was furloughed, but my colleague wasn't furloughed. Does that mean her job's safer than mine when we go back? There's going to be whole new issues around people's anxieties and worries that we can get ahead of the curve and start thinking about. And probably one of the first places to think about that for many teams will be workforce planning. We're going to have people saying that I worked from home successfully during the outbreak. I want to continue to do that. We're going to have other people that will say, I never want to work at home again, so please don't make me. So within your teams and your workplaces, whatever they be, these are conversations that the sooner it started, the better. Of course, we have no boundaries to know when or what, but they are going to need to come. The other thing that we can see that will start to happen is that there will be anger, frustrations, and issues around your own personal beliefs about what you see, how you experienced the virus and your home working situation. An old phrase that is often used was people used to say to each other, "How was your war?" And it was quite difficult to understand what that meant. But when you think about it, some people during the war found new jobs, new careers, and new things that they really found really important to them. They became really important in their community and found a purpose that before that they hadn't found. Other people have found it very difficult and had periods where they feel very lost and isolated and alone. And another group of people will be suffering a lot from guilt. We hear of companies that have some furloughed staff and some staff that are working harder than ever, unsung heroes. We hear a lot about the NHS, and as a member of the NHS before I moved into the business world, I know how amazing a job that they are all doing. However, I am also aware that a lot of people in a lot of companies are working incredibly hard and are also unsung heroes. And this is a great time to make sure that you as the managers or the leaders or as colleagues can reach out and actually reassure each other of how grateful you are for everything they're doing on a daily basis, and make sure that you appreciate what they're doing. We also need to think about how that's going to be when they come back into the workforce. Someone who has been furloughed for the entire length of the virus may have had a very different situation. In the very early days, which was only 2 or 3 weeks ago now, people said about all the new things that they were going to be doing. They were going to exercise every day and learn a new language and become a great cook. How many people are actually managing to achieve that with all the actual things on a daily basis that they're having to do? So we're going to have to talk about what that makes that person feel. Are they pleased? Are they cross? Are they frustrated? And on the other hand, the people that didn't get furloughed are very frustrated that maybe they would have quite liked to have had the opportunity to clear out their garage or do some of the things and bond with their children. So there's going to be whole new aspects at work that within teams, our teams are never ever going to need so much direction and probably rebuilding. So as tempting as it's going to be when everybody gets back to work, to have all hands on decks, to become productive again, I guess probably my leaving message is, remember, in order to build a really successful company in the future, we're going to have to look at the people that build it, the humans that come to work every day. We're going to need to really, really foster a culture of inclusivity, of trust, so that those people feel valued and can work really effectively to rebuild our companies and our economy to make us successful in the future. Thank you for tuning into this LinkedIn Live this afternoon. I'm Zoe Eccleston. Thank you very much.